everyone, I'm Anna.
And I'm Jeff.
And you're listening to We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, a podcast where we do exactly what the title says. On today's episode, we're judging the pilot of one of Jeff's favorite shows.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our pod.
Hey, what's up?
All right, are you excited about this one, cousin?
I am, cousin Carmi.
This is kind of the episode that I've been kind of waiting for. This one. This is one that I'm like really excited about.
Oh yeah.
There is a lot to talk about, not just the show that we're doing, just everything in general. If we ever picked a show that best represents, I guess, me as like what I do for a living.
Yeah.
Not me as a person.
No.
Yeah, me at like what I do for a living and like the environment that I work in. Very much a very accurate portrayal of working in a kitchen, working in a family-owned type restaurant, which is exactly what I've been doing for the last 15 years or so of my life. We are talking about The Bear.
Bears.
I mean, it is one of the most popular shows on TV right now. It's been nominated for these awards and won all these awards. And even though this is classified under one of my favorite shows, I mean, this is one of your favorite shows as well.
Oh,
we
yeah,
both absolutely love this show. And yeah, so we have a lot to talk about, so we can go ahead and kind of get started with everything. Anna's going to give us the series and episode information. We got The Bear. The episode is called System. Anna, take it away.
The pilot, System. Along with the rest of season 1, it premiered on Hulu on June 23rd, 2022. It currently has 3 seasons with a total of 28 episodes. A 4th season is already on the way.
It's just so funny. Like, we've been doing all these shows. It's like 385 episodes, 290 episodes, and now we're at like 28 episodes.
Right.
That's so awesome. It's so much better now. So much easier.
Yeah, especially to binge if you wanted to binge it. I mean, you could easily go and start this on a Friday night and watch at least half of it.
Like we started
by Sunday night.
We started watching Hunters on Prime Video, and we're almost halfway through the entire series. And it's like
so
18
good.
episodes. Yeah, it's 18 episodes total. Go ahead. Sorry, Boo.
Sorry. The Bear, the series, was created by Christopher Storer. And up until this point, Storer had only directed or produced comedy specials for stand-ups like Bo Burnham, Gerard Carmichael, Lil Rel. I love Lil Rel.
I specifically named those 3 because I love all 3 of those comedians.
The pilot was written and directed by Storer. The series follows Carmi Berzatto, a prominent chef who leaves his life of working in a Michelin-starred restaurant to work in his family's Italian beef sandwich shop in Chicago. Storer based the series off of a real Chicago restaurant called The Beef because he grew up in Park Ridge and was a regular at The Beef himself.
That's really awesome, and we must go there one day.
Yes. Is it still open?
I think so.
Oh, well, we're going. He was best friends with the owner's son, Christopher Zucchero, who now owns the shop. He also plays Chi-Chi and Zucchero's personality, and said that they were the inspiration behind Richie. Storer's sister, Courtney, is also a chef and serves as the culinary supervisor for the series.
That's awesome. Like, just everyone's
involved.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say the way to just get a job is to give yourself one,
Exactly.
and just to help people. Matty Matheson, who plays Neil Falk, the restaurant's fix-it guy, is a renowned chef and restaurateur, and he was originally brought on as a consultant for season 1, and then he became executive producer and a series regular.
I mean, once again, just kind of creating a job for yourself.
Exactly.
Enough personality, and you can be kind of one of the scene stealers
I love
the
Falk.
series. Yeah.
I mean, he's great. All right, Jeff. So this is classified as one of your favorites, although it can also be claimed as one of mine.
This is definitely like an our favorites.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your restaurant career and why this show resonates with you so much.
It is, I think with any occupation, it takes a certain type of person to do that successfully. obviously working in a kitchen, there are tons of different types of personalities and you're around a bunch of different types of people, but there is a certain level, there's just a certain thing that you kind of have, and it's just this ability to just kind of turn your brain off and just do what needs to be done. And
well, I imagine so, because things come at you nonstop.
Right. And I mean, like, you have to be, I think the thing that I've learned from working in restaurants, I'm kind of going to be going in different orders because I don't have like a
standard answer.
Well, I don't have a standard answer, but I also just, I mean, I didn't fully understand or appreciate everything that the restaurant industry taught me until I was much, much older and much later in life. I didn't fully understand, honestly, kind of around the time where I met you, kind of around the time where when we first met, I was back in school. I wanted to go back and get my English degree and become a teacher. And then, you know, when we met, we continued to talk about that, and you know, it was something that I wanted to do, but it wasn't something that I was, like, passionate about. I enjoy taking the literature classes, but I mean, like, that's because I love reading. And so it's just kind of like, is that something that I want to do for a living? And I tried doing other things, and then at the end of the day, I think we sat down one day, and you were like, what makes you happy? And I was just like, I love being in a kitchen.
You do.
What makes me happy is making people food and making them happy. That's what makes me happy. Like, that's what gives me a sense of satisfaction. So I will kind of begin with one of the first jobs that I had, where I worked for a very popular fast food chain. It's McDonald's. I'll just go ahead and say it's McDonald's. I don't have to hide anything.
Oh, I always wanted to work at McDonald's. My dad wouldn't let me. He thought it would be too hard. He thought it would, like, he thought, he just was always telling me, like, no, I think that will be too hard for you, in the sense of, like, he thought it would be very fast and people are rough on you.
Right.
And yeah,
that was kind of when I first started work, because my first restaurant job was at Jones Creek Cafe. I think I've talked about that in another episode.
You just bicycled over there and just got your first job.
Tyler and I demanded a job. No, I'm just kidding. Our 15-year-old selves rode our bikes and demanded a job. No. So I started working. When I started working at McDonald's, that was really when I started to learn human behavior. And that was when I started to learn how people treat you simply because you work in fast food or you work in the food service industry. I mean, if you really want to talk, I mean, like, I was 16 years old. By today's definition, I was a child. Back then, I was not considered a child. I was considered pretty much an adult, which technically, age-wise, yes, but now we kind of treat kids their age. And whereas I think when I was growing up, I'm kind of the last of the generation where, I mean, like, full-on adults, like, cussed me out and, like, yelled at me.
I think that's why my dad didn't want me to work there.
You know, you got to think about back then, even way cheaper than it is now, like a $4, $5 combo. Like,
I remember when a Happy Meal was like $1.29 or something.
And I think it was like $1.99 when I worked there, or something like that. It was super cheap. And if there wasn't enough ice cream in their kids' McFlurry, I mean, I would get screamed at. And, like, these adults are yelling at this child over something that, like, I could fix if you just stop yelling at me. Like, that's always what I wanted, like, tell customers. I'm like, if you just stop yelling, I can fix this for you, and I can go and fix. I mean, that's anybody who wants to complain. Everyone has a right to complain if your food's messed up or if you're not satisfied with your food. But, like, don't waste their time. Like, just let them fix it. Like, they don't care. Like, they just want to fix it anyway. So yeah, I developed a very thick skin. I definitely think that working in the restaurant industry for so long, working in kitchens, has very much the reason why. It is part of the reason why I developed such a wall up with people, just because people would just come in and out. God, it's so weird when you kind of break it down psychologically. Like, people, when you work
you have to.
When you work in restaurants, you know, people just come in and out of your life. So it's just kind of like, that's kind of just how you start treating everything. And when you finally have a little bit of stability in your life, you kind of realize, you're like, wow, I've made 1,000 acquaintances. I don't have a single friend. Like, and that's a realization I had to come to at some point in life, where it was like, wow, I have a lot of great coworkers from my past, and if I run into them, it's always a good vibe. But like, I never really was able to. I realized at some point that like I was like, wow, I really just like don't have any friends. It's just like I have a lot of like acquaintances, and I think a lot of that comes from my mentality of, oh, well, you're just going to be out of my life in a few years, like, because that's what you think when you're in a restaurant. Like, you just think, these people aren't permanent.
But I think I can relate to that a lot. Based from my retail work about customers screaming at you, where they would scream at you, and I would just look at them and be like,
I can't imagine. Okay, yeah, like, food is one thing. I can't imagine,
because that is definite face to face. I mean, most of the time, people screaming about food is through the server, not the person in the back.
Right.
I mean, you hear about it secondhand.
Right.
But yeah, I just feel like that's very relatable to retail, and kind of one of the things I was going to say about the restaurant business and how you're just saying about acquaintances and friends. I feel like your job has always been very much, when you leave your job, it's there. You don't bring your job home. I mean, unless one of the crew calls in, or Kevin needs you or something,
right? Which never happens.
It's very rare. If like
I have a great setup, I love my job,
right? Yeah. And so I feel like that kind of comes with the territory of a restaurant job. It's not like, and you're friends with the people at work. Right. Don't get me wrong, but
it's a different type of friend, though.
Yeah, it's you don't like hang with them on the weekends and stuff.
But there is still this. All these places that I've worked at, and even though it's this weird combination of like, you're an acquaintance, but you're also like my family. It's this very weird combination that I think like is very, I wouldn't say exclusive to the restaurant world. I'm sure there are plenty of other jobs that have the same like vibe and mentality, but it really just seems like restaurants have that's like the most consistent thing, is like you are someone that I will not see you again maybe in 2 years, but until then, like, I got your back. It's just kind of that mentality. I think that's also what has made me such a loyal person. It definitely, I will say one thing about myself is I have staying power.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I will go ahead and give myself credit. I have the patience of a saint, and I know I do.
And you have a good work ethic. You don't call in sick. Right. You don't, I mean, I love working. I had to message that you were like dying.
Right. When my vertigo, right.
Yeah. When your vertigo hit, like you made me wait, because you were like, let me see if this passes, and I'm like, you were on the floor
you were in a
the
flop
bathroom,
sweat. You were in a flop
your
sweat.
Your shirt was like drenched from sweat.
Yeah,
you're sick. So yes. I definitely feel like you have a good work ethic, and that's just been true in all the jobs that you've had over time.
And any job, and I haven't worked in a lot of non-restaurant jobs, as you know, but any time that I go and work somewhere that isn't a restaurant, I just don't like the environment. I just don't like how... Well, I worked at one place, I guess you would call it retail. Yeah, it's retail. And it was... an office supply type store, and it just felt very much like everyone was just on an island by themselves. Like everyone was just like on their own island, and I'm just like, this sucks. I'm just like, this is what working in an office is like. Like, even though it wasn't an office job, like it very much felt like it's just like what it's like. People just, it's just silent and like no one's talking to each other. Everyone has staggered lunch breaks, so no one has a lunch break to go. I'm like, this sucks. I am an introvert in a way that like social interaction drains my social battery, but it really being in a kitchen and being around other people, it really kind of fills my social battery, and it makes me feel,
have to talk to each other,
right? And it makes me come home and like want to hang out with people and like want to go and do stuff, even though I do come home sometimes and I am very tired and I'm very sleepy. Obviously, when I come home at 11 o'clock at night, I'm like, let's go out. I mean, like, Saturday or Sunday when I come home, and I'm just like, I've been around everyone, and you're like, hey, you want to go do something? I'm like, yeah. And you're like, you're not too tired? I'm like, no, let's go. Like, and I'm ready to go. I might be tired, but it's just like, or when I used to work Tuesday mornings before our singer nights, And by the time I got home, I'd be like, I'm tired, but like I'm excited to go, because it's like it would start to fill my social battery, but then just enough for me to be like, okay, now I want to go do something else and I want to go socialize. Which when I was a manager at a fast food place, when we were wearing masks the whole time,
oh gosh,
because we was in the middle of COVID. I joke about that a lot, but so I was a manager. So I left the job that I have now. I left there in 2019. God, that was the summer before COVID hit.
Right.
And
great opportunity.
And it was a great opportunity. It was a great job. I worked with great people. It just, unfortunately, it happened during COVID, and that was when everyone decided to go insane. And immediately there was just this shift in society where everyone was just being so ugly to each other all the time. And I joke about it a lot, but it is true. That job kind of broke me in a way.
Oh, yeah. Easily.
I mean, like I know this sounds insane, but like my skin is just now starting to recover from that. I think this is the first, and I'm crossing my fingers, knocking on wood. This is the first summer where I haven't had a terrible breakout.
Oh yeah, you used to break out all over your like trunk area, your back. And...
I would just have rashes everywhere, and maybe that was stress, but I think mostly it was just, I just think I was always so covered. That's biology. We're not going to talk about that.
Well, right, but I definitely feel like that time was really different.
It took a long time for me to kind of break out of that, because I mean, I couldn't speak. I mean, like, it was like we were wearing masks and we were in this hot kitchen and we had to be covered in every which way. Cause I had to wear a hat, and then I had to wear like my polo, which, is just so comfortable
and a belt
when you're working in a kitchen with no air conditioning. And it was just, I was miserable. And I remember that was the job where I was like, I'm never working in a restaurant again. I can't tell you how many times I have said that.
Oh, yeah.
Working at a restaurant. I have said that. So for a little sneak peek, I have a list.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Of all the restaurants.
Are we going through that now?
Let's just go ahead and do it. Now that we're just talking about it.
Let's do it.
Let's just get on it.
I asked Jeff as part of this. So as part of our preparation, I looked over and I said, how many restaurants have you worked at? And I was like, can you list them all out? Do you remember? And so he did. All right.
I did.
So here we go.
And when you looked at it, you immediately started laughing.
I did. I was cracking up.
All right. So you just want me to list it off?
You don't have to go by. If you want to go the big years, you don't have to say through when. I mean, you can list them out however you want.
Okay. So I've talked about Jones Creek Cafe. That was in the year 2000. I think I was 15 when I started there. Okay. Buster, dishwasher, oyster shucker. I've talked about it before. McDonald's, just talked about that. My senior year of high school, I started working at a restaurant called Cafe American. The location that I worked at is not there anymore, but I think there's still one
on Jefferson.
Yeah, by Bocage.
Yeah.
That is the one and only job I've ever been fired from.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So 17, 18-year-old Jeff, he's got the long shaggy hair. He just thinks he's too cool for school. He's got a little attitude. I didn't really get along with this bartender who was the self-proclaimed assistant whatever to the regional manager. And I just really didn't get along with her, and I got into an argument with her, and I probably didn't use the greatest terminology because I was an immature little boy. And I then got a call from the manager over the phone. He fired me over a voicemail.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was fine. And then I went and got a job at Jack in the Box, which I worked at for, I think, a year.
Was that the one on Coursey?
That was the one on Coursey at Sunburg that is no longer there. I think it's a gas station now, or it's a gas station parking lot. The building's not there anymore. Yeah. And then, so my first real kitchen job. This is my first, official kitchen job. So I've worked in fast food. I'm not saying that's not an official kitchen job, but I mean at a regular restaurant, not at a non-fast food restaurant. This was Applebee's. I was a fry cook, and that was the first time I really learned
how to make things. But I also kind of just learned
things that they weren't necessarily it was just oh, I never thought of that. It was just one of those kind of things. It was when I make a grilled cheese, use already melted butter and brush it on your bread. Don't use cold butter and try to spread it on the bread and rip your bread up. I was oh, I never thought of that because I just never sat down and thought about it before. I learned a lot there, but I became really good friends with the people that worked there, and there was just too much drama going on. Too much. You're hanging out with him. You're hanging out with her. That's my ex. I don't like y'all hanging out.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw them talk in the parking lot last night when we were closing. Like that kind of stuff was going on. And at this point in time, the Chimes East was had just opened. It was brand new,
right down the street.
Yes, and so I had a lot of friends that were working there. So I was like, cool, I'll go work there. So I worked at Chimes East for a few months. I worked, I think it was like sandwich, like builds. Like I would like do like the bread setup and the plate,
like the board.
presentate boards. Yeah. Builds is what I think we called it. I don't remember. So that was the last job I had before I moved to Florida.
Oh, okay.
So the very first job that I had at Florida was I worked at the Black Pearl. It was the only, I don't know if it's fine dining, but like
fancy,
the closest thing to fine dining that I've ever worked at, maybe other than Mangiuni's. I don't think Mangiuni's is fine dining though. I think it's just
just nicer,
like a niche, like a
level above Olive Garden.
Right. Oh, definitely.
Hey,
I love I love Olive Garden. Tour of Italy, are you kidding me? Come on.
Okay.
All right. So I worked at Black Pearl. I didn't work there for very long. So when I lived in Florida, I lived in Destin, and it was very much like you don't get an hourly job when you get a restaurant job in Destin. You want tips. You want server, bartender,
well, tourism,
busser,
people
right.
coming in.
You can get hourly pay, and I would appreciate that present day. But when I was 21 when I moved to Florida. So I mean, like I was like, I want cash. Like I want cash. I want drinking money, going out money. I'm sure. So I worked at Black Pearl for a minute, but I was like, I want to kind of find a tip-based job and somewhere closer to where I lived. And in the Destin Commons, there was a Hard Rock Cafe, which I was like, all right, if there's any restaurant I'm going to work at in Destin, Florida, let me work at Hard Rock Cafe where I don't even have to like shave. I can keep my piercings. Like, so at this point in time, I had facial piercings. I had a lip ring. I had a tongue ring. Oh God, I hate saying it out loud.
How many total piercings have you ever had?
We're doing that? All right.
Write that list down later, but okay, keep going.
Okay, now I want to write that down. All right.
We'll get back to that.
We'll get back to that. All right. So I worked at a Hard Rock Cafe for like a while. That was probably the longest job that I had in Florida. That's where I met my first wife. That's where, I met a lot of really cool people, but I kind of had, I had more drama happen at Hard Rock. Drama just followed me around, and I kind of just wasn't getting along with people. I'm like, let me just move on from this place. Like, I don't want to work here anymore. Everyone, it was like Hard Rock Cafe. I don't want to diss anyone that works there. That's not my intention. But when I work there at this point in time, there was very much this attitude of we're better than everyone because we work at Hard Rock. It was this really weird, culture there where it was like, and I related, but it was like the kids that like were like the metalheads and the punks that got like, kind of outcasted in high school. So then they found their people and then they started outcasting people. Like it was like that kind of repetition of a cycle. It very much just felt like, oh, no, you're not cool enough. You're not alternative enough to hang out with us. Like you're not metal enough to hang out with us. And it really just became a point where I was like, I hate working here. I was like, I hate working here. And that's all the stuff that I like. So, I love my punk rock. I love my metal. I love wearing black and all that stuff. But it's just like, to me, that was their personality. And to me, I was like, this is just what I like. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that was my lesson with when you're young, you identify yourself by what music you listen to, the movies that you like. I learned that as an adult, those are just your interests. They're not like your personality. So Hard Rock taught me that. So it was a nice little kind of transition, another like kind of adult rite of passage kind of lesson.
Yeah.
So I briefly worked, and this one came straight out of my ass. Like I only remember this because of the song. It's burned into my memory forever. So when I left Hard Rock Cafe, I was already working. I was looking for a second job when I was working at Hard Rock Cafe. It was before I worked for that construction company. It was before I went to Chili's. So I went and worked at Cheeseburger in Paradise.
Cheeseburger in Paradise.
I hated it so much. I almost put this. So I have a special list at the bottom where jobs that I had for restaurants that I worked at for like a day or like a week or something like that. I thought Cheeseburger in Paradise was one of those, but it's like I think I was there like long enough to like have a memory of working there. Like these three, I have
all
like
the songs. I'm sure.
So I heard Cheeseburger in Paradise like 8 million times. I I still want to have a cheeseburger in Paradise because it sounds delicious.
I was gonna say, was the food good? I don't think I've ever been to one.
I don't remember. I don't think I ever ate there.
Oh wow!
Like I said, like I think the only reason why I remember working there is because of the music and like the that I had to wear, the Tommy Bahama Hawaiian shirts that I had to wear.
Oh, okay.
I hated it so much, and they were like, "You have to wear white shoes." I'm like, "I hate it. I hate it." I'm just like everything about this, I hate.
Get me out.
White shoes? You kidding me? I was a
At
busser.
a restaurant?
I was a busser. They wanted me to wear white shoes. I'm like, you are out of your mind, but I did it. And then I wore it for like a month, and they rotted away in my closet, I'm sure, because I'm not a psychopath. I don't wear white shoes.
Yeah.
All right. So after that, I went and worked at Chili's. This was the first real server job that I ever had. This was the first time, also the first restaurant where I kind of worked everywhere. I really learned. I started off as a host, and I kind of went from host. Then I started doing expo, which I loved. I absolutely loved doing expo. We haven't talked about the bear yet, and we're already well into this episode. But and I love being an expo. So I was at Chili's for a while. Once again, I quit. That is the job where I had like an epic quitting story, in a sense that like it was remembered by staff for a while, and it was talked about by staff for a while. I found out later on. So for a really long time, I struggled with my blood sugar. I used to get really low blood sugar because I wasn't eating, I wasn't taking care of myself, and I would get really low blood sugar, and I would just get like really sick. I'd get faint, all that stuff. So I was having one of those days where like I was genuinely sick. Like this wasn't like I was hungover. I'd been sick for like 2 days, and I call my job. Oh no, I was like, I have a shift. I got someone to cover my shift.
Yeah, I remember you told me this.
I got someone to cover my shift. Like I was good. I was just calling the restaurant to let them know, which I didn't even have to do. I was just doing that because I'm just a full. Anyone knows I'm a full on rule follower. I will always do the process. I will always do the system that is required of me. So I was calling just to let them know. I'm like, hey, this person's working for me. And there were two managers in the office, and like the GM, I guess, was like listening to me talk to the other manager on the phone, and he just like kind of grabs the phone. He's just like, no, he's not getting a shift cover because he's fucking hungover. And I heard that, and I was just like, she was like, yeah, you're gonna have to come in. I'm like, I have someone to cover my shift. Like, what are you talking about? She's like, no, David says you need to come in. So like, yeah, I named him David. So I went into there. I feel awful. Like I'm going in there, I'm like, it's kind of like when you get up really fast and you're like really dizzy. I was just feeling that the whole time. I drove to work, like, and I mean, this is long before COVID, when you can't even do that now. Like even if I wasn't like viral sick, they're like, stay home. So I go in, and then there's another manager there when you work in a place like Chili's, there's like 800 managers. And I walk in, and the manager that was there was just like, hey, you feeling okay? I'm like, no, I'm feeling sick, and I got someone to cover my shift, but David said I had to come in and work. And I kind of started probably going off like, oh, this is bullshit, blah, blah, blah. And this other manager was just like, well, you're here, so just get over it. And then like I just like looked at him for a second, and then I looked at everyone else, and like no one was saying anything. I'm just like, no one's going to defend. What am I thinking? No one's going to defend me. So I'm just like, I just looked at him, and it was like a staring contest. And I just remember like my heart just started pounding, and I was like, oh really? I have to be here? And he's just like, yeah. And then I full on took the apron off, did the full like arm thing where like I untied it and just went like, put my hands up, and I'm like, F you, I'm out of here. And then I left. And then as I'm walking out, one of my coworkers, who's also one of my friends, was like walking in just for his shift, and he was just like, hey man, what's up? I'm like, I fucking quit. And then I just like walked to my car, and he was like, all right, see you later. And then
was this the Chili's that we just went to eat at?
No. The Chili's that we went to was the Chili's that I ate at when I was waiting for Maddie to be born.
Oh, okay, that was that story.
That was that story. All right, so we're nearing the end.
No, we're not.
Yeah, we are. Because once we get to Baton Rouge, those are easy. Those are easy. Those are easy stories.
Okay.
All right. So after Chili's, after I've famously walked out of Chili's, I like immediately got a job at PF Chang's.
Oh yeah.
I was a food runner. When I tell you that was the best job, one of the best jobs I ever had, because I was the only food runner on the lunch shifts. So I would get tipped out. I didn't have to share my tips with anyone. I would get tipped out by every server, every bartender. I was walking out of there. There was a shift where I walked out of there with like $200 in tips for running food.
Wow.
For running food, and I was getting paid hourly. So it was like I was getting cash tips, so I didn't have to claim them.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so
we hope the IRS is not listening.
I claim every tip I ever had.
I know you did. You're a rule follower.
So I love that job, but that was when it was time to move back home. I was ready.
Right.
I was ready to move back home. So this is October 2008. This is right after whatever hurricane hit Baton Rouge.
Gustav.
In 2008, because I was gonna move back sooner, but Mom was like, no, you should stay in Florida till this hurricane blows over.
Yep.
So I moved back home. I initially got hired to work at George's, but I kind of immediately, I think I had like told my manager at PF Chang's in Florida, like, I think there's one in Baton Rouge. I'd never even been to the one in Baton Rouge before. So I was like, I think there's one in Baton Rouge. And so I think she called the manager and they called me. And that was when I started working at the PF Chang's in Baton Rouge. The only thing about that was I was working with like 8 other food runners. So I had to
like $10.
I was getting paid hourly, but I was getting like $10 in tip out or like $20 in tip out. I'm like, this sucks. Like, I don't want to work here. So that was when in November 2008 was when my life started. Because that was when I started working at George's, November 2008. I was just turned 24. And that was my first kitchen job in a really long time. Originally worked there for 5 years. Kind of got tired of, I kind of just got tired of working in a kitchen. I kind of got burned out. There was a lot of drama going on in my own life and other stuff. So then I originally started working at Reginelli's, which is a pizza place. And then I worked at Reginelli's and Heads and Tails. Those were kind of like right after each other. I don't have a lot of memories from working at those places. They didn't leave much of an impact. And then I worked at Monjuni's. That was probably my most those are one of like my 2 most prominent server jobs. I made great money there. Actually, I know servers that still work there.
We had lunch.
That still work there because the money there, even during COVID, the money was still consistent and still good.
Oh, yeah.
I know at least 2 or 3 people that still work there after a decade. All right.
We still love you, Monjuni's, though.
Yes. So when I was working at Monjuni's was when the really sad thing happened in my life. And that whole reason why I left Monjuni's. That is another podcast for another day. But I left there not on great terms with the management, and I started working at Galvez Seafood. I also worked at Italian Pie. I forgot about Italian Pie.
You forgot that one. Okay.
And I also forgot about Mason's.
Oh, you worked at Mason's?
I worked at Mason. These are like my 1 week or less, because when I was like getting kitchen jobs that I didn't like.
Okay.
So yeah, two that I forgot about. I knew I was going to randomly remember some. So then I started working at Galvez Seafood. That job was pretty sweet. I met a lot of really cool people there. Really good money. And then after that, it was on a half shell in Fernando's, which I worked at very briefly. And then I came back to George's in 2015 to go back into the kitchen. A year later, almost a year and like a month later, you and I met, and that was my second round at George's. And then after that, I've talked about it before. I worked there for a few more years, and I went and worked at the fast food place as a manager. Then I worked at District Donuts as a manager. That closed down, and then came back to George's. And here we are.
And
All
here
right.
we are today.
So just a couple places that I worked at, just really briefly. I have no memory of them, just the names of them. So there was the Lighthouse in Florida. I was a busser there. The only thing I remember about that was the first time I had to yell corner, and I had to yell behind, and all. I kind of had to learn all of that lingo. I think I was a busser dishwasher. Burger Smith, which I've talked about that story before, where on my first day at the new Burger Smith, 2 employees were fighting in the parking lot. And I think I trained at the one closer to us for like a week or something like that. Hopefully, I mean, this was such a long time ago. I hope those people don't work there anymore.
And we haven't been back since.
Right, and then I briefly worked at Tiger Bay Grill, which isn't there anymore. It's like a gas station, convenience store type place now, and that's it.
And then Italian Pie and Mason.
Yes.
So that is 27 restaurants.
Are you including all the different Georges?
Yes,
Okay.
I did. Whoops. So that's like 25 then.
Still, that's a lot.
And it's just crazy because we always joke. So I moved to Baton Rouge officially in 2007. I had moved back in 2006, but while the house was being built, I lived at my mom's and moved in 2007. And you moved back in 2008. And looking at these restaurants, I had been to P.F. Chang's, I had been to George's, I had been to Monjuni's, Fernando's, and then by then I met you in 2016. But I always joked, like, maybe I had seen you at some point in all that time.
And I constantly make the joke, if I waited on you when I was at Monjuni's, that was when I had long hair. That was when I was man bun.
Uh-oh.
That was when I was man bun,
You were
facial
a little-
hair. You would have not been attracted. You would have.
No,
you
I
wouldn't have
don't
liked
know
me.
if I would have been attracted to
You
the
wouldn't
man
have
bun.
been. I can go ahead and tell you wouldn't have been.
All right. Well,
Okay, so we've talked. I've talked more than I think I've talked on this podcast ever. I'm just kidding. So we've talked about this before. Your dad was a cook. Much like me, we weren't chefs. We were cooks. He was he was a merchant marine.
yes,
He was a cook on
cargo ships.
Okay, so he was like a crew chef, obviously.
Yes,
okay.
And this is a funny thing that will bring you back to our below deck days that we used to
yeah.
watch. Is his title was chief steward. He was the chief stew, and so on those episodes when Rocky thinks she's going to be cooking in the kitchen because she's a steward, I can see why she was confused, because that's very common terminology in maritime. Is
right.
the stew is usually a cook. But anyway, I felt for Rocky at that time until later. But anyway, yeah. So my dad was a merchant marine. He was a chief steward on ships, and so we would go to the wharfs and wait for him to come in. I would go down to the Seafarers International Union with him, uptown New Orleans on Jackson Street. I think it's now in Gretna. He would go and look at the boards to see when ships would come in for him to get on a ship for 3 to 5 months or 6 months at a time. So I think I've always had a connection to restaurants. Like I said, I had wanted to work at McDonald's because it was literally a block from our house. So I thought it would be really easy. But kind of like you were telling the story, was my dad did not want me in that atmosphere.
Yeah.
He felt like fast food would be not too hard, that I couldn't learn it, but that the customers would be too mean in fast food. He was just like, no, I don't want you to be like verbally abused by people who were upset about a Happy Meal. But one of my funny stories about my dad is, so on the ships, they would get things industrial sized. And so I think they still do these at some schools where you would collect Campbell's soup labels.
Yes.
And the school would turn them in to Campbell's to get money or something.
Yep.
And my dad would come back from being out at sea with like hundreds of like the industrial size. So that was like the 5 times whatever value than like the little can you get at the store. And so every year, when it was Campbell's soup time to collect, I would have hundreds. And so like one year, I think at my little school that I went to for elementary school, they bought like a ton of like the playground equipment strictly based on all the Campbell soup labels that my dad had donated. That's like awesome. Balls and jump ropes and the stuff to do double dutch and just all of those like kind of maneuverable toys, not like the jungle gyms and stuff like that, but like balls and bats and stuff like that. And so I think I was always really proud of that, so, shout out to my dad.
Aww. All right, so we are both very passionate about food. We both love our food.
I love food.
So what is this is not a here's a random question I'm going to give you. I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be hard.
Okay.
What's something, so you and I aren't just fans of food. I mean, obviously I just went and talked about how much that I've worked in restaurants. Not just I've worked in restaurants. I love cooking. And we both love cooking. We both love creating. We both love reaching people's hearts through their stomach.
We do.
And I love making people happy by making them food. I've always
Me
talked
too.
about that. So what is a dish that you remember being proud of?
Of like any time in my life?
I mean, yeah, sure. Like something that just sticks out to you. It could be something simple. It could be something
Well,
like something that like maybe, I don't know.
like I think I make really good meatloaf and mashed potatoes.
God, so good. I was actually hoping you were going to say
that's
meatloaf,
like one of
'cause I
my
was gonna say that
favorites.
for
I know
you.
this one is kind of silly. I mean, there's really very little cooking actually in it. Is I love making like an antipasti salad, the one
Yes.
with like the tortellini and the
those are-
artichokes
those
and
are-
mushrooms
and the ones
tomatoes.
that you make are really good. Yeah.
Yeah, so I love that. I love making different kinds of salads.
Yes.
Like, I think if there was a station I would have to be at, it would either be like baking of some sort,
Right.
or like salads, because I love putting together salads. I like making homemade dressings. So I love doing those kind of things. I also feel like I make really good spaghetti and meatballs. You also make really good spaghetti and meatballs for me, which is one of my favorite things that you make me. Trying to think.
I love making spaghetti.
My funny story, I guess, just like I will tell you, my dad started cooking lessons with me when I was pretty young. So I think both my brother and my sister were out of the house. You know, like I've mentioned, they're older than me. So my dad, I think, started teaching me how to cook around like the time I was like 9 or 10ish. So maybe my sister was still in high school, but the first thing he started teaching me were sauces. He was always like, if you can make a sauce, you can make anything, you know? And so he taught me how to make barbecue sauce and spaghetti sauce at the same time. And so he, you know, showed me how to make this one, showed me how to make this one. So one day I decided to make my parents dinner, and I said, I'm going to do it all by myself. Y'all
so
go
cute.
and sit down. And I essentially, I guess in my head and in the pot, combined the barbecue sauce and the spaghetti sauce recipes, because he didn't write them down.
Oh,
It was
okay.
just, he was showing me.
Right.
And I guess as I was cooking at around 10 or 11 years old, I mixed them all up. And so they were both like, it's actually pretty good.
I was about to say,
You know?
I was like,
I mean, you know, you have barbecue meatballs, you know, for appetizers a lot of time in the crock pot.
I know it's
so-
not barbecue at all, but I'm thinking like of like chili spaghetti. I'm thinking of just like certain flavor profiles that.
So
that
I mean,
spaghetti
they both
goes
thought
with
it was
everything.
they both thought it was funny that I
Yeah.
had combined both, but that's kind of my very first ever. And then I always remember the very first thing I ever baked all by myself. There were two things. I have my mom's Betty Crocker cookbook. It's
Yes, you
actually
do.
it's sitting right behind me on
Yes.
our buffet. My mom was just like, if you want to make something, just go pick something out. And I saw these like cream puffs in the Betty Crocker cookbook, and I made them. And my mom was like, these are really good. And I really had no idea what I was doing. I just followed a recipe and made it. And so that's why I always tell people, I'm like, it's not really hard. I mean, like I've
Yeah.
said, I messed up barbecue sauce and spaghetti sauce, but you know what? They still ate it. It was edible.
Right.
But it's not hard if you have a recipe, if you just try.
Oh, yeah.
Or as Amanda on Smosh says, if the things all sound good, like putting them all together, it'll probably taste good.
I love that episode.
And then my very first real big cake excursion was making pineapple upside down cake,
God.
and it was really good.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was. My mom was very proud of me. I worked really hard on making it like really pretty.
Oh, that's cute.
So yeah, that was my first big cake I ever made. So yeah, cream puffs,
Oh,
spaghetti sauce mixed with barbecue sauce recipe. It was pretty tasty. We all ate it.
That's cute.
But yeah. So what do you remember being like a first like thing that you really like making?
So the first kind of things that I would make a lot, it was when I kind of just realized at some point, this is just kind of when I first started living on my own, when I was, late teens, early 20s. I'm like, God, and you talking about spaghetti. God, I'm like, if you just cook the noodles, you cook the meat, you heat up the sauce, and then you mix it all together, that's pasta. It was just one of those things where I was like, I can get red sauce, I can get Alfredo sauce. It's just like, it was just a point to where I was like, and it's so cheap to make when you're living on a budget. When you're young, you're living on a budget. I've always lived on a budget, so I've always known
and it goes really far,
right? And it's just like I can, especially a single serving, you get like an entire pack of pasta that's gonna last you. You get like a big pack of meat, and you're just serving yourself. That's one like chicken breast per serving. That's gonna last you. Like that's what I'm agreeing with you on. So I remember the first thing that like I remember making where I was like genuinely proud of myself was when I was working at the Black Pearl, and I made chicken Florentine for the first time.
Yum.
And I know. And
you've never made that for me.
I made it for the first, this is the first and only time I've ever made chicken Florentine. So it was the first time that I like felt a sense of accomplishment from making something. So I was still kind of new at Black Pearl. Well, I was new the whole time because I didn't work there for very long, but I was learning one of the cooks was he was a chef. He was teaching me how to make it. And I remember like it was the first time like I made it by myself, and I kind of made the whole thing. And then one of the servers came back and was just like, who made the chicken Florentine? I was like, I did. She was like, oh, the customer I have said that's the best thing that they've eaten since they've been in Florida. And I'm just like, it was just like, so it was the first time I felt like a sense of accomplishment. And that was the first time I was like, I like this. I was like, I like cooking,
And you're really good at it. I mean, I joke a lot about how organized you are, but I think that's really important as a cook. You have to be very organized and methodical, and you're very organized and methodical when you're cooking.
Yeah, I turn into a different person. Like, I definitely am.
I mean, I'll never forget one of the first times you grilled out. I think it was for Chance's going away, and usually if I grill out, like I just fling everything onto the barbecue grill, and I walked out there and it was like all in order, all in a row.
I'm sure Rick and Blake are around me like commenting on my organization because we all were like, I do the same thing.
Yeah. So I just remember going, oh, you can fit so much more stuff on there when you're organized.
But some of the dishes in recent years that I've made, I've been really proud of, was for your Rainbow Party, my elote dip.
Oh, that was amazing.
That everyone went nuts over. I have also become quite a mixologist over the years. And
you should get that bar card again.
I would definitely say that I get a lot of praise for my cocktails that I make.
You do.
My rum punch is stuff of legends, apparently. It's gotten a lot of us tore up on a New Year's Eve.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say that everything that I've learned from doing brunch, but most specifically, my biscuits.
Oh, your biscuits are
My biscuits,
amazing.
I know my biscuits are the best. And my chicken biscuit, my hot butter chicken biscuit, or like the hot spicy chicken biscuit that I make, I know that that's fire.
It's
like,
so
I know
good.
that's good.
It's so good.
Yeah, and then just recently I followed a recipe to make shepherd's pie, and it was so good.
I was trying to be good yesterday because Friday night I was scooting around the house being bad, and I really stubbed my left toe very hard, and I initially thought it was broken, but I don't think it is. And so yesterday I promised that I would not scoot around the house, and I was good. And so Jeff came home to cook. I have been sending him so many recipes and ideas of things, of like new things to put in our rotation of, meals that we do. And usually I sous chef for you. Like I will have everything ready to go, defrosted, laid out on the counter, any spices, any dishes, any pots or pans. But this one, you came home from work and did all of it. Yeah. And so I felt very guilty that I could not at least help sous chef for you because you told me not to. But I was in the bedroom, and all the way from the bedroom to the kitchen, I could smell it. It was so delicious. I was like, "Are you already cooking? Because I think I smell it." And you were like, "Yes, it smells so good." I was like, "I want to come and look at it," but I was like, "Send me pictures." So it was delicious, and we have leftovers for lunch tomorrow.
You just made me think of something. Are there certain like food smells, regardless of what stage that they're in? Are there certain food smells that you just love that like you smell it and you're just like, oh, it's like.
I will say this one, and it's probably one of my like things I really regret never having my mom really go step by step. It is my mom's pot roast. My brother and my sister.
You've talked about that so much, yeah.
Could tell you, I don't know what she did with either the garlic or the oil or the butter or the onions or the celery.
Something.
It's all of us in the South know how to cook with a trinity. Garlic, onions, bell pepper, celery, whatever it is, whatever your combo is. But whatever my mom did with it, it was just the smell would permeate in the house, and I'm like,
well, it was made with love.
I'm gonna be eating good tonight.
Oh yeah.
And I've made pot roast. You've eaten it. It's been okay,
delicious.
But it's just has never duplicated that smell.
Right.
And maybe it's just my mom's smell.
Yeah.
But so
yeah, you like my works pot roast.
I love your work pot roast. So yeah, it's good.
Okay, so let's keep talking about cooking. If we were not that we need to go to culinary school,
okay,
because we're already pros at what we do. If you were at culinary school, what would be kind of the thing that you would want to learn? I have a little list. You want me to name them all out?
Sure, list them out.
All right, so some skills or things that you learn in culinary school. We got knife skills, restaurant business, nutrition, baking, sauces and stocks, world cuisines, and plating.
It's really tough because I feel like I'm a good baker. I'm not a good decorator of baking.
Right.
I'm not a huge frosting and icing person.
It's
so I like
tricky.
a very simple cake.
I learned a lot of that.
So I might want to learn more baking stuff, but I feel like I'm pretty good at that. Sauces and stocks, I feel like I'm pretty decent at making a sauce from scratch or a stock from scratch, like a chicken broth or a beef broth with vegetables and letting it boil, and I can do that. Maybe more like plating. I'm not very good at like the art on a plate or making things go together right. I think it's like when we watch Top Chef, we see and we're like, what in the hell? Like when Angelo puts white chocolate on fish, you're like, what in the fresh hell is he doing? And then the judges are like, oh my God, this was so amazing. This was like
sweet and salty.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it was.
Right.
Like they didn't say, but you're just like, what? And so you have to learn that somehow. And I guess that comes in tasting and, palate classes. But I think I even kind of joked to you one day if we ever went to like Europe to maybe taking like as one of our days, like a class at the Cordon Bleu in Paris or a
so
Cordon Bleu. And not because we're trying to get like a certificate or a degree, but like just to go and take a class there.
Same reason why we did the New Orleans School of Cooking. I mean, like we know how to make a roux. Like we know how to make gumbo. I mean, like we're not, we're cooks in the South. Like we know how to make a lot.
But it was so fun.
It was so much fun, and the teacher was amazing. She was awesome.
Yeah,
so, I
she
mean,
was
like,
really
she was a lot of fun. Anyone who wants to go do that New Orleans School of Cooking, who knows? Maybe we'll go with you.
Yeah, it was really a fun, and it was. We ate so much. They gave us a lot of food.
Good.
Yeah.
And that those pralines, was it the pralines that we had? Oh my God, those were so good.
Yeah, and you can do like two options. You can actually fully cook, or what we did was we watched her cook and we tasted along the way.
I much preferred that.
Yes, because the other one was like a whole nother like 90 minutes
Lunch and
longer.
a show.
Yeah, it was really good.
All right. So,
what about you?
Oh, it's plating all the way.
Okay.
You know how much I love plate presentation. When we're watching Top Chef, and like they're kind of making stuff, and I like watching the process of them cooking on Top Chef. But what I love is just like I love how intense,
a double schmear.
I love how intense plating is. I love that. I love like the image of people's faces like being so close to the plate, like while they're
with the tweezers,
right. And I just want. I mean, it's like tablescaping. I mean, like you just want, or it's like interior decorating. You learn a certain skill, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I get it now. Like I want to learn the science behind plating. Like I want to learn that so bad. I mean, honestly, all of these other things. Look, I know how to do a lot of these things. So I mean, like it's not a braggy
and my dad
thing.
taught me a lot of the knife skills and stuff.
Right. And I mean, and no offense to culinary school, but I mean, like there are so many avenues of all of these things that you can learn on the internet. And so at George's, I didn't create, well, I guess I created the brunch menu. I always kind of say I created it, but like I didn't invent French toast. You know what I mean? Like I just said we should put this on the menu. The only thing that was kind of mine were the chicken biscuits. And I remember the first day before my first brunch where I'm like, I'm running it. I'm Carmy. I'm running it. Like, I'm running brunch now. So I was like, okay, I got to make my omelet fillings. And I'm like sitting there. I'm like, I don't think I know how to properly dice an onion. I was like, I don't think I've ever really sat there and been like, how do I do this? So I went on YouTube and I figured out the way, and it's super easy. You know what I mean?
I mean,
like,
and it's also talking, because I also feel like, and I say that sometimes why I think we're good partners, because you'll listen to me even though sometimes you're like, babe, I'm a cook, but I'm like,
yeah.
I do know other stuff. It was
Yeah.
just like me even suggesting like something like self-rising flour over all-purpose flour, or using the blender for the hollandaise instead of you like manually whisking it. Sometimes a
Hollandaise.
shortcut is better.
Right.
I mean, and easier. You
Hollandaise
know,
sauce is my mortal enemy, though.
yeah. So it breaks all the time.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that's what's fun also with you working in a kitchen, is just seeing all the things you create, but also getting
so
to
much.
eating them, even though I haven't been to brunch in about 7 weeks and I miss it bad. So
Oh yeah, everyone's asking it. Today's Sunday, by the way, so today was brunch, and
I miss brunch.
right before I left, Whitney was like, "Tell Anna I miss her." And I'm just like,
I miss
she
you.
misses coming up here.
I
Trust me,
do.
Anna brings her crew in. Brings her crew in every Sunday to support brunch. All right, you want to get into this episode?
Let's do it.
All right. System. Plot summary. We open to Carmy walking down a city bridge at night. He slowly approaches a cage in the middle of the street, and he unlocks it while shushing whatever's inside. Well, what's inside is a big-ass bear, and it comes out, and he's like slowly backing away from it, and just as the bear is about to attack him, he wakes up. He's in his family's restaurant, the original beef of Chicagoland. It was just a dream. He's awoken by the delivery doorbell. Carmy has inherited this restaurant after the death of his brother Mikey. The restaurant is in really bad shape. They're behind on bills. They can't afford the quantities that they need. Carmy is calling in asking for favors, but in a post-COVID world, I mean, everyone's hands
Supply
are tied.
chain is
Supplies
bad.
are short. I mean, this is like 2022. They probably filmed it earlier in the year when it was much more intense. Yeah, something we can all relate to. Everyone's hands are tied. The old arcade games in the dining room are so loud. Carmy desperately, I keep almost saying Camry every single time. Carmy desperately wants to unplug it, but Tino, one of the cooks, reminds him that if he unplugs them, they will stop working, which is such a restaurant thing. Like, you know, we have our arcade games. They are plugged in they work. We turn them off every night. But there's always like, so at George's where I work at, so last Sunday, the stereo up front, like that plays the radio, was not working.
Oh,
And so I don't really mess with a lot of electronic stuff at work. Everything is so rigged that I'm afraid to touch anything.
oh yeah. It's like me with the remotes.
And so it's like, okay, so finally, like I like text Kevin and I'm like, hey, like the stereo isn't working. Like, what's the trick? And he's just like, okay, did you hit, like, there's a little button. He was like, did you hit stereo? I'm like, yeah. I hit the stereo button. I was like, it's still not coming on. He was like, just hit the front of it. And I'm just like, hit the front of the stereo and it, like the receiver. He's like, yeah. I smack it, it comes on. George's. So yeah, Tina tells him that if he unplugs the arcade games, they're not gonna work. So Carmy realizes that the arcade games hadn't been emptied in months, so he takes all the quarters out of the arcade game, and he's like really kind of showing his resourcefulness. Like he's kind of showing that like he is very much someone who's like, I'm willing to do what needs to be done in order to to pay for stuff. So he ends up getting so Carmi prepares beef for the day. He begins to call the other cooks chef, which they aren't used to. Carmi gets some black market beef from Chi-Chi that he pays for with the arcade quarters.
It's like from a cooler in the back of a truck, you know?
Carmi is thinking about ways for the restaurant to make money. He decides to have a ball breaker tournament, which is one of the arcade games. It's supposed to be like a spoof of like Mortal Kombat. I think that's what they joke about. Okay. It's like a European knockoff of Mortal Kombat is what Fax says. And so he announces they're gonna the beef is having a ball breaker tournament, and he posts it on social media. He then calls his sister Sugar and asks if she can bring the jacket over. Didn't really understand what that was. Maybe they talk about it in a future episode. We are then introduced to Sydney, who's my favorite character. Carmi's new sous chef. This is her first day. Looking at her resume, he sees that she's very overqualified. Carmi is curious as to why Sydney wants a job at his restaurant. Sydney tells him that this was her dad's favorite spot when she was young, and they'd eat there every Sunday.
Oh,
it's so cute.
Like me at George's.
Every Sunday, my boo. Carmi assigns her to make the family meal. So family meal is when you work at... I've only experienced this at a few restaurants. Usually you order your own meal, you get your employee meal. But at smaller type restaurants, you'll have just a big meal before the shift starts. It really is just kind of a way for everyone to, one, this is the only time we're going to be able to eat for the next 10 hours. Two, let's all kind of
come together,
get on the same page. Let's get the vibe going. Let's all connect. It is also just kind of a way just for everyone to just kind of like have a chill moment before the insanity starts. So Sydney then admits to Carmi that she knows who he is, mentioning that she is aware that Carmi was an up-and-coming chef working at the best restaurant in the world in New York City. So she felt it fair to kind of return the question. Carmi's like, all right, well, you're really overqualified for this. Why are you here? So then Sydney, I think, has a fair return with being like, why are you here? You know?
Exactly. Like, I know who you are.
And then he just responds with making sandwiches, which is such a freaking chef thing to say. Don't talk about your feelings. Carmi enters the kitchen where Tina and Ibra are working. Ibra begins asking Carmi about the beef. He is worried that Carmi is coming in and changing everything. He then goes to Marcus, who's my other favorite character, the baker, and asks him for a double order of bread for the day. Marcus reminds Carmi that the mixer is broken, and he is doing it all by hand.
That is crazy.
Do you understand how insane? I know you understand how insane that is.
I do.
Is insane. When I thought about that, I'm like, that poor boy's hands. All right. All of the cooks keep talking about the system and how Carmi is messing up the system. And every restaurant, I feel, has a system, whether it's real or not real,
or good or bad.
Good or bad. Every restaurant has a system. So Carmi, So then another cook named Gary enters the kitchen. Carmi asks him to make a compost for the day. We enter Richie, which is Anna's, the love of Anna's life. Other than me, the second love of Anna's life.
Yes, I've loved him since he was in Mona Lisa Smile and Girls.
That's Anna watches Mona Lisa Smile once a month.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure I come home at least one night shift per month, and that's already on.
Yes.
Great movie, though. Love that movie. So enter Richie, Mikey's best friend, and I guess, like, quote-unquote manager of the beef. I don't think there's any real hierarchy at this place yet. Yeah, he makes his presence known the millisecond he walks into any room, into the kitchen. He's already loud. He's already talking. He's already grilling Carmi about the beef and why he's changing it. And so even though like Carmi is the owner of this restaurant, it really seems like Richie is the boss. Like, it really seems like he's the one that knows everybody. He's the one that has everyone's respect. Everyone listens to him. He has all of these connections numbers, and Carmi is still like learning everything. So there's just, nothing but tension between these two. Pretty much throughout the whole first season. And then as we're going into the newest season that we haven't finished yet, it's still, their tension is still going strong. I'm just waiting for them. They just need to fight each other. Anyway, Richie's annoyed that Carmi is doing the ball breaker tournament and it won't do anything for business. He doesn't want the ball breaker types to be in the restaurant, I guess, and messing with the patrons. Richie follows Carmi into the walk-in, which is the walk-in cooler, and that's where he meets Sydney. The Richie Sydney dynamic, I love them. Like, I love it. It was just briefly shown in this episode, but I love their back and forth. Like, he's so up here and she's so like down there. Like, she's so calm and chill,
Right.
and he's just so
frenetic 24/7.
I love when they just have their little spats. Just a little side thing. So all Richie wants to do is talk to Carmi, but Carmi isn't having it. Keeps saying, I'm too busy. Richie reminds him that while Carmi was living his dreams in New York, Richie was taking care of Carmi's family, and his own personal debt is starting to build up now that he's going through a divorce. So Richie's really been there for Carmi's family when Carmi was, living in New York, which isn't a bad thing for Carmi, but it's like a reminder of like, I know what the problems are. Like, I know what we're dealing with. And you're new, you just started here. Like, you don't know the whole story.
Right.
So Richie tells Carmi not to go changing things and messing with everyone's head. Everyone's job is on the line, and it's not time to change things up. Which, I mean, like, I kind of agree with.
And I think that's also why he's upset about the ball breaker tournament.
Right.
He's like, this one video game tournament isn't going to change everything. Like, we need to figure out how to make things better long term. I mean, that's what I think is going on.
Right.
In his head.
I think Carmi is just trying to get through the day to day, and Richie is kind of thinking
money really fast.
And Richie's kind of thinking, no, this is the long term. You're right. I didn't even think about it that way. Then Richie tries to remind Carmi that this is his brother's house, and he was fine running it before Carmi came back to Chicago. Carmi quickly replies with, then why didn't he leave it to you then? Which it looked like, I mean, there was the moment where like there was like that dead stare, and then luckily Marcus comes in, interrupts it, and says, hey, we're out of olive oil, and kind of breaks the tension. Carmi returns to the kitchen to do prep, but can't find his knife, which can't tell you. I have my own personal knives at work that I save, my little rainbow, my little iridescent knives with my little green handles. If I couldn't find those, I would be like, who stole my knives? Carmi insists to Richie that the ball breaker tournament will bring in the extra money they need to get by. Richie disagrees, saying if that they just serve the spaghetti special, that will bring in the crowd. Carmi refuses, pretty much implying that like Richie probably suggests this every day.
Probably.
Being that it's Richie, Carmi then explains to everyone to keep their station clean, and he clarified that he calls everyone chef because it's a sign of respect. Also, it's to show that like we're all equal, like we're all in this together, we're a team, we're all chefs. No one's better than anyone else. The power struggle between Carmi and Richie continues. While Richie is distracting everyone with the story while Carmi is trying to get everyone to work, Carmi finds his knife on the floor underneath the line. Sugar arrives at the restaurant. She hasn't come by there since Mikey died. She tells Carmi that she hates seeing him work there, and she then reminds him that their uncle wants to buy the restaurant. Carmi says the place isn't for sale. Carmi goes up front and sees a line outside. The ball breaker tournament was a great idea. Gary asks Sydney what she's doing for a family meal. He asks if it's going to be impressive or delicious. My favorite line of the whole episode, delicious is impressive. Yeah. Because it is.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite. That's my favorite line of the whole episode. Everyone gathers around for family meal. They're all going around saying what they are thankful for. It's a really great vibe. It's a really sweet moment. Kind of Tina, who's kind of been this kind of hard ass the whole episode. She kind of has a moment where she's like, well, I'm grateful for all of y'all. And, kind of seeing that like she has a sweet side. But like Carmi's kind of getting a little antsy. He sees the crowd getting a little rowdy outside. A fight begins to break out. Carmi's trying to break it up. Richie, best scene of the episode, he comes out with a gun and a megaphone, shoots a warning shot into the air, and then, it's just like, hey, everyone needs to calm down. We got some rules. Number one, y'all are going to be respectful. Y'all aren't going to mess with the patrons. Two, y'all have to buy an Italian beef combo in order to enter the tournament. And I'm like, yes.
Right.
Yeah. Like that was, instead of giving them money, it's like, well, they are giving them money, but it's like put it towards the business. And then the third one was, I hate littering. Pick up after yourselves. How intense he was. I was cracking up. That was the best scene.
Yeah, it was good.
So they go back inside. He asked Carmi making sure Carmi's all right, kind of showing that like they fight a lot, but they love each other. And Richie, they go back inside. Richie is still pissed. He said the crowd out front is great, but they don't have enough food to feed the crowd plus their usual volume of customers. Which at some point I'm like, I know he's stressed out very much, but I'm like, you didn't think about that, Carmi, but he also is limited on the amount of beef that he has, so that's also a thing. After getting some advice from Carmi, Marcus's bread has improved. Marcus realized that Carmi is the real deal and calls him chef. So kind of Marcus is the first one to really be like, okay, I'm going to follow this guy. I'm going to follow Carmi. Like, he knows what he's talking about. Like, he's given the good advice. He has the skills. And earlier in the episode, Carmi kind of has this, like, portfolio folder of all of his ideas. And Marcus kind of found it on the floor. Something fell out of the folder, and he picks it up, and it's a James Beard Award that he just has, like, folded and, like, crumpled up in his folder. So it's like, this dude's the real deal, and he doesn't even care. Like, it's not even, like, a big deal to him. So Carmi begins to... so there's kind of this whole argument at the end of the episode between Carmi and Richie about, like, you know, you don't know what's going on. You just got here. I know what's going on. You know, like, I know how to... you know how to cut stuff, you know how to chop stuff, you know how to follow a recipe, but I know business. That's basically what he doesn't say in those exact words, but he's like, I know how this business works, and I know that, like, this is what gets us money, and I know that this is a waste of time. And so he kind of is like, you're going to go back there and you're going to make the spaghetti special because that's what brings in the crowd. So you're thinking Richie finally got his way. He's getting the spaghetti that he's been talking about the whole episode. Carmi starts to, after Marcus calls Carmi chef, he starts to open the tomato sauce cans, but then immediately throws them away. End of episode.
End of episode.
All right.
All right.
So great.
It was
So great.
so
I mean, like, we don't have to talk about if we're going to watch this or not. This is such a great show.
Yeah.
I love the dynamics between all the characters. I know how much you love Richie.
I do.
I love Sydney. She's my favorite. I definitely am a Sydney when it comes to being in a kitchen. I'm very much in my own world and just kind of laser focused. But yeah, this show's the best. There's
It's
just
amazing.
no other way to put it. I know both of our favorite episodes are from the second season.
Yeah.
Right? Fishes and forks. I always want to say spoons. Forks.
I love fishes.
Such a
I
good
love
episode.
forks. It's so good.
All right, so we've been talking for a while, and it's getting hot, and I'm ready to go sit down with some cool fan air.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up this episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That way you'll be notified every time we publish a new episode. You can also follow us on Instagram at WeJudgePilotPod. Leave us a comment, maybe suggest a show for us to watch. As always, you can leave emojis in the comments. Anna, I see a lot of things written on that piece of paper.
Yes. All right. The bear emojis.
Of course.
We've got the bear, a steak, a sandwich, the Italian flag, the dinner plate with utensils, the chef, a gun, the like little alien that looks like a video game alien.
Yes.
The gamer
Like the little
console.
8-bit. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then for you, for all of the places that you have worked.
That's all the places, that little column.
So fries, hamburger, a chili, a box, pizza, Chinese food, an apple, a chicken, an oyster, a guitar, donut, a fish or the marlin,
This is
and
the best.
spaghetti and meatballs.
That is the best. Thank you so much for doing that.
You are welcome. I was like, I've got to list them all out for my boo.
Have you just been sitting there looking at the list of the places that I
Yes,
worked at and coming? I love you.
So, all right, boo. Well, we are going to head out, but we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening.